It has been said that courage is not simply one of the virtues, but the form of every virtue at the testing point.
Your Holy Scripture reminds us that those of noble character possess the relentless determination to prefer the needs of others more than their own, even to the point of laying down their life for their friends.
Rob was the sort of person who wanted to find the biggest and best and most difficult test for his character.
The way that he died was how I know he would have wanted to die.
At that time, the circumstances were top secret. There were very few people that knew exactly what had happened.
He was a man who did what he said he was going to do. Actually, that's one of the reasons that the men that served with him enjoyed serving with him so much.
If it had not been for the heroism of Dick Etchberger, it's quite clear that they probably all would have been killed.
It's a great group of guys, come from all walks of life, but we all have something in common. We were thrust into a combat situation and we did what needed to be done.
I wouldn't say we were heroes. I would say definitely he was.
I didn't run on to do anything heroic. I ran on to go fight next to my brother.
You get very good training on how to do your job in the military. There's no training to tell you how to wear this.
Jimmy Doolittle was the first gentleman I met, and he said, "Mike, welcome to the greatest fraternity of men in the world." And then we'll honor that young man as he comes on board with us.
Someone is being recognized. I'm saddened we're in a position where we have to recognize one.
No matter what happens for the rest of my life, I'll always know that I was around the great ones.
The Medal of Honor is our nation's highest award for acts of gallantry and bravery in the face of the enemy, above and beyond the call of duty. Since 1861, 3,446 have been awarded. In the fall of 2010, 3 more service members joined this honored fraternity: Chief Master Sergeant Richard Etchberger, Army Staff Sergeant Salvatore Giunta, and Army Staff Sergeant Robert Miller. Sergeant Miller grew up near Chicago, Illinois, but met his fate on a cold night in Afghanistan in 2008. When his Special Forces team was ambushed and his teammates pinned down by fire from insurgents, Sergeant Miller moved forward and attacked.
I think there are several factors that influenced Rob to join the Army. It's something that runs in our family. My husband had been in the service. Both of our fathers had been in the military service. And I think another important factor was Rob's sense of appreciation for the freedom and opportunity we have in this country.
Rob was full of energy. He enjoyed being very active. He enjoyed challenging people a little bit.
Always on the move, pulling chairs over to counters and tables and climbing up and getting into things.
We never really knew what to expect. One day we'd have the tuba, and the next day we'd have a pommel horse in the garage. It was just always something new.
Rob was an amazing leader, probably one of the best leaders I ever had. He led not necessarily always by the spoken word, but by doing, by showing.
I could look at him and say, "You go take care of that because here's the deal," and snap. He would, focus in, things would happen. When I needed to count on him and call on him, always there.
He was a go-getter. If he couldn't figure out how to do it, he would. Special Forces was written all over him before he even got out of high school.
I would describe Rob as honorable, trustworthy, responsible, fun, quick to laugh, and he had that sense of pride and honor at even such a young age, to the point where I've never seen it since.
I saw Rob being kind of a seeker of values. Rob was really fascinated with Hemingway's idea of a code hero, the idea that you can be destroyed but not defeated, grace under pressure. Being that outward leader was something that he really took to heart.
His leadership in gymnastics, his leadership at school, his leadership in a family, that translated so much easier into his military.
I knew he'd be a good leader. I knew that it was kind of that sense of leadership and that sense of honor was part of who he was. You could tell that about him even at high school, and you just kind of knew that he'd be great at it.
When Rob told me that he was going to join the Army, I knew it was coming, so it wasn't a surprise. We just didn't know when. I thought he might try to go a few more years in college, but he decided it was time.
You know, we grew to love Robbie because Robbie's Robbie.
He brought something to the team that nobody else had, like a zest for life, his youth, which infected everybody.
Well, we live vicariously through Robbie. You know, he'll leave on Friday and come back home talking about his exploits, and you're like, yeah, I've done that now. Because Robbie did it, he had the freedom to come and go as he wanted. Hey, I'm gonna go, there's a hurricane coming, and it's gonna hit the shores of North Carolina. Guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go surf. Really, Robbie? You know, that's Robbie.
It took us a while before we realized Robbie was a gymnast, and when we found out, it was game on. Everybody else kept trying, push that one button on him about being a gymnast, and didn't affect him at all. He was proud of it.
He spoke, you know, about 5, 6 different languages.
He would sit down and try to learn Pashto with the partnered force that we were working in so that he could give commands.
He spoke his Pashtun to the point that he was like a celebrity on our fire base. Robbie instantly gained a particular trust with the locals when we came around, and a lot of people up and down the valley, you know, knew who Robbie was.
I remember a lot of times when we'd be shooting, we'd have the young kids from the village trying to get in close to our trucks. So he'd wrestle with them, and nothing too hard, but you know, just kind of like he would, like, as he was an older brother to the kids.
The Afghans were out there playing the game. I forgot the name of the game. You know, one of the Afghans came around and offered the horse, and Robbie jumped on to say within about the next 15 minutes he was racing, doing racetracks with all this. Must have been about 20, 25 Afghans on horses. He was flying straight for a tree, and he threw his hands all the way back, leaned back, branched right over his body, and then he popped back up on the horse, and he was back racing again. I'll never forget that. It was pretty awesome what he did.
I could tell that Robbie made an impact on the kids, because a couple weeks after Robbie was killed, going out and telling the kids that Robbie had been killed, and some of the kids started crying. They really enjoyed interacting with him, and he had made an impact even on some of the younger kids in the village around the fire base.
We planned for a different mission that evening. We received intel that there was something going on a little farther north than what we planned on.
It was completely unexpected. We figured, all right, small element, 10 guys, and we just unleashed on them. By the time that we're dismounted to go over there, we really thought it was battle damage assessment.
We crossed the Gowerdesh Bridge north of where we had attacked the compound. We were looking for, bodies, clothing, drag marks, blood, all the signs that people died. The next thing I heard was Allah Akbar, and some gunshots go off.
We heard a cry, and then we heard a heavy belt-fed weapon open up, and then we heard Robbie's weapon open up.
Robbie pulling trigger on the squad automatic weapon, that's very noticeable.
You can distinctively hear the saw shooting. You can see it too because the muzzle flash was so bright. Robbie started engaging targets, and there was quite a few dudes. I couldn't believe we had walked that close up to him.
It's just very chaotic trying to figure out the whole fog of war thing definitely applies in this situation.
What I was thinking about is how I'm going to get my guys back across this river because the situation's going south real quick.
Nick McGarry was like, get down, and as soon as he said that, a bullet whizzed past between the both of us, and we were like, oh man. Next thing we know is, we hear Captain Cusick say he was hit.
I heard the radio call, I'm hit, I'm hit.
About a minute or so later, Robbie said, break contact.
Robbie's not one to run from a fight. It wasn't in Robbie to not take the fight to the enemy. He knew our captain was hit. At that point, Robbie's the only one on the ground up there, and he probably realized that he needed to create some white space for the team to consolidate and to help out the captain.
And I heard Robbie shoot the rest of his rounds off, and at that point I was waiting for him to say, moving. And I look up, and he's on his back.
Staff Sergeant Miller.
Rob Gutierrez and myself got up, and we ran to his location. He was gasping for air. His eyes were skyward.
Staff Sergeant Robert Miller.
Your best friend. Your teammate. He was he wasn't that Robbie that we all knew.
Staff Sergeant Robert James Miller.
Obviously, I'm very proud. All of us wonder, can we perform the same way and keep our head and do what we have to do in an extreme situation like that?
When I heard that he had sacrificed his life for others, that did help us a lot in dealing with the grief, that we knew that his death was not in vain.
He loved his family, he loved his friends, he loved the work that he was doing, and the way that he died was how I know he would have wanted to die.
Robbie was the definition of dedication. The hard part is just, he's just gone.
The Medal of Honor for Rob, to me, is awarding his character. And it was an outgrowth of his character that created the opportunity for his actions. That was in Rob already.
It represents the gratitude of the country and the fact our son will become part of the written history of the United States is a moment that I'm not sure I appreciate adequately yet.
When he died, a little bit of us died with him, but a lot of him lived on in us. It's influenced my life enough to want to become a better soldier and a better husband, a better father, and do what I can to honor his name whenever I put on a uniform.
While the Medal of Honor now stands as our nation's highest honor, it wasn't always so. In the first 86 years of our nation's history, the military was actually against the idea of military decorations. That all changed with the coming of the Civil War.
We have come here today to honor 5 unusually brave men.
Medals of Honor are awarded mostly for one of 2 reasons. You're trying to rescue somebody, it's a medic, a typical medic is dragging somebody across the rice paddy and they keep getting shot, but they keep doing it. Or you're being overrun and everybody's dead and you run around, you grab grenades and you're holding them off.
It symbolizes the ultimate in bravery and valor. The Medal of Honor, the nation's highest military decoration.
I got my medal for saving the life of Lieutenant Tom Norris, which is another Navy SEAL Medal of Honor recipient. He was believed to be dead and I went back in, found Tommy, rescued him, swam with him and one other Vietnamese SEAL on my back for several hours till we were picked up off the coast of North Vietnam.
I got within 3 feet of the Chinese and looked back and I was by myself. And I remember thinking, you went to a lot of trouble to get here, there's no point in wasting the whole day. So I let out a war whoop and jumped in the trench with them. And we had kind of a serious affair there for quite a while.
The idea for the Medal of Honor came in December of 1861 as a way to promote the efficiency of the Navy. Later that month, President Abraham Lincoln signed it into existence.
The history of the Medal of Honor, of course, begins in the Civil War. There were no medals at the time given by the nation. There were a lot of private medals given by generals or states, but no national medals.
A short time after the Navy Medal of Honor was established, the Army created its own design. And the first Medal of Honor was presented in 1863 to Army Private Jacob Parrott.
These were the 2 medals that were given during the Civil War. Again, acts of bravery, or a guy who was a color bearer, taking lots of shots and saving lives. And so there were a lot of medals given out during the Civil War.
Nearly half of all the Medals of Honor awarded came from the Civil War. That's due in large part because at the time, no other military award was authorized. Take the youngest recipient of the medal, William Willie Johnston. He was awarded the medal at just age 12 for being the only drummer boy to return from the 7 Days Battle and the Peninsula Campaign with his drum. But in 1918, the Pyramid of Honor was established, creating 3 new awards which could be earned for lesser achievements: the Distinguished Service Cross, the Distinguished Service Medal, and the Silver Star. And in 1963, the criteria tightened further when Congress established new guidelines for who could be awarded the medal. A third Medal of Honor was created in 1965 when the Air Force introduced its own version.
It took us 100 years, but we got it right. This Medal of Honor of the Air Force, it's about 50% bigger than the Navy and the Army, which is the Marines also, and they're so jealous.
In all, 3,448 Medals of Honor had been presented, 618 of them posthumously. However, only 7 medals have been awarded from the current conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan.
I wonder why there haven't been more. I really do. I know there's one that I saw and read the action, and I'm looking at it and said, my God, if this doesn't qualify, what does?
And while only a select few can be called Medal of Honor recipients, many have said the meaning behind the award goes far beyond the achievement of any one person.
The Medal of Honor belongs to every man and woman who has served, is serving, but going to serve our great nation of America.
Chief Master Sergeant Richard Etchberger took an oath to serve the U.S., even if it meant holding a secret so close that only his wife and a few select military members knew. When he died in 1968, few knew of the heroic actions done by this radar operator, especially his own family.
He grew up Depression era, worked for his father at a 5 and dime store in Little Hamburg, Pennsylvania. Would go hunting and fishing and camping in the woods with his high school buddies, just kind of like what every kid did.
He was a bright guy. He was smart. He was witty. I don't think he had an enemy in school. He was a friend to everybody.
He and his high school buddy, Don Yoakum, decided they were going to join the Navy because they loved those white uniforms. And between the time he was 16 or 17, for some reason that nobody can figure out, he decided to go with the Air Force instead. The field he went into was electronics, and it was called radar bomb scoring. The idea was, how can we get more accuracy out of dropping bombs from a plane?
When he and my mother married, I was 12. And we traveled from Utah to Africa to North Dakota.
I really enjoyed growing up in that lifestyle, being in a lot of places.
But he was quiet, he never raised his voice. For me, he really commanded respect probably because of that. One thing that was really neat about him is he would always bring home this equipment. He'd bring home like canteens and the web belts and air mattresses, and in one respect he would sort of get us involved with the life that he led and what his life was about.
In 1967, as American involvement in Vietnam was reaching its peak, Chief Etchberger volunteered for a mission unlike anything he and his family had ever encountered.
The mission in Laos was dropping bombs close to Hanoi on enemy territory, or enemy targets.
From what I understand, they were looking for the top radar people at the time, and I believe he was, from what I've been told.
When this mission came up, we didn't know what was different, except for he moved us back to his hometown. He moved us back to Hamburg, Pennsylvania, which was entirely out of the ordinary.
Because of the extreme nature of the mission, Chief Etchberger's wife, Catherine, was invited to the Pentagon.
They brought all the wives in because they wanted to make sure that the men had the backing from their wives.
The military man and the wife signed a secrecy agreement.
She wouldn't disclose anything that she knew until the mission was declassified. So she kept that promise to my father in the Air Force.
My mother was that kind of person. If she made you a promise, she'd keep it. She never said a word to any of us.
The GI, which I was one of, signed a blanket extension in the Air Force and resigned from the Air Force.
The official story was Chief Etchberger was working at an airbase in Thailand. Like most military families, Chief Etchberger's children were used to long absences.
It's hard to think back to when I was 10 years old that Dad was leaving. I don't know if it was for a month or 6 months, but I do know that he was gone for periods of time where Mom kind of ran the show. Steve at that time had come back to North Dakota. He was getting ready to go in the Air Force. So we were with our mom quite a bit at times. Where he went and what he did, I have no idea.
But this last absence would not be temporary.
Well, we were sitting at the dining room table in Hamburg, Pennsylvania, and we had just gotten done eating dinner, and she had just served us strawberry shortcake. My mother received a phone call.
And the gentleman on the other end asked if he could speak to Mrs. Etchberger, and I handed the phone off to her.
And she took the phone off the wall and about a minute later started crying. And then she broke the news to my brother Richard and I that he'd been killed.
The same day I was told he was killed was the day my daughter was born. So I had just come out of the hospital with getting my first baby, and just called my mother, and not 2 hours later she called me back with this news. So at that point in time I was real conflicted as far as my emotions.
I was heartbroken at what happened. I cried about it.
I felt terrible, we didn't know where he was, of course, but we knew that he was dead.
And I've never eaten strawberry shortcake since then. We didn't know any of the details at that time. It became, eventually, the story that I was told was that he was killed in a helicopter accident somewhere in Southeast Asia. And I actually believed that story for another 18 years.
When Dad's body came back, they had an open casket viewing for him, which, when I think about it now, helicopter crash, he looked perfect. That totally makes sense to me now, but as a 10-year-old kid again, I had no reference point for what someone looked like in a helicopter crash.
The true story would remain a secret for 18 years. Richard Etchberger's story didn't end with his death. Decades later, as details of the Vietnam War that were once held secret began to see the light of day, the truth of Chief Etchberger's actions were finally revealed.
I pretty much knew that it wasn't just a helicopter crash that killed him.
The time that really made an impact on me is when Tim Castle called me. And he wanted to know at that point if I wanted to hear the story about my father.
In 1967, the Air Force had a serious problem, and that was that President Johnson wanted the Air Force to conduct a bombing campaign against North Vietnam to stop the flow of men and materiel down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The problem for the Air Force was that President Johnson had also decided, for political reasons, that B-52 bombers could not be used in that air campaign. What they decided to do was turn to a radar bombing system. To use that system effectively against targets in Hanoi, they had to place the system within 120 nautical miles of its target. To do that, they either had to place the equipment in the Gulf of Tonkin on a ship, or they had to place it in Laos, which under the Geneva Accords of 1962 was a violation.
In order to avoid any treaty violations, Chief Etchberger and the other airmen in his crew resigned from the Air Force, at least on paper, and went to work for defense contractor Lockheed Aircraft Services.
But their real job was up in Laos, and up there they wore civilian clothes and they were technically civilians.
The facility was called Lima Site 85. The site sat atop a mountain with sheer cliffs on 3 sides. Its remoteness was critical to its survivability, since the site was only 15 miles from the border with North Vietnam.
So we took over and commenced running missions. We'd have frags come in, drop such and such aircraft with such and such weapons on it on such and such target at, maybe it was a rail yard 20 miles right outside of downtown Hanoi. I mean, just various targets wherever we got missions for.
The North Vietnamese military were quick to catch on.
About January of '68, we got attacked by biplanes. Snoopy, here we come. The Red Baron's got you.
The attack ended with the only CIA air-to-air combat kill when an Air America helicopter shot down one of the biplanes. The failure of the airstrike didn't deter North Vietnamese forces.
So it went on, and they was building roads closer and closer to us. We was dropping bombs to protect ourselves.
On the night of 10 March 1968, a group of specially trained Vietnamese commandos climbed those cliffs, surrounded the radar site, and at 3 o'clock in the morning they started shooting into those vans, and there was absolutely nothing that the technicians could do.
Most of the Air Force crew on duty were killed. The off-duty crew, including Chief Etchberger and Sergeant John Daniel, were hiding on a ledge along the side of the mountain.
During the night, we could hear small arms and grenades going off on top. After that, we didn't hear anything except voices we could not understand. we're the only ones alive. And about that time, we started receiving small arms fire.
The radar technicians at Site 85 were just that. They were not combat skilled folks that had received any kind of real weapons training.
Well, Gish was hit again. His was fatal. I was hit in both legs. Stan was hit, and he said, Monk's going. I said, Dick, we're the only ones alive. He said, I know it, John, I know it. I said, what are we going to do?
And if it had not been for the heroism of Dick Etchberger in taking an M16 rifle and protecting his comrades, it's quite clear that they probably all would have been killed.
And about daylight, or when we could start seeing, Air America chopper came in. It was the first chopper there, and he happened to see us.
It came in, went into a hover, and dropped a hoist down to Dick Etchberger and the people that were next to him at that point. As Dick Etchberger finally got ready to go up as the last person, Willie Husband, another technician who had been hiding throughout the battle, ran down the path and jumped on the hoist along with Dick Etchberger. So the two of them went up into the hoist.
So we lifted off, and as we was lifting off, one of them come up and emptied his weapon through the bottom of the chopper, and one round hit Dick thin, the first time he'd been hit.
Chief Etchberger bled out before he could get further medical attention.
Since Congress created E8 and E9 pay grades in 1958, no other E9 in any of our other military services has ever been awarded the Medal of Honor. Chief Etchberger is the first.
I really thought about this over the years, that, you know, how much difference does a bullet going that far different make?
And legends like Chief Etchberger serve as role models for an entire new generation of airmen.
Chief Etchberger was not a person that sought notoriety. He was not a person who was looking for a pat on the back. He was looking to get the job done. It would be a good day for Chief Etchberger and his people if nobody ever found out about what they did, because it was all supposed to be secret. Nobody was ever supposed to know what they did. And they all recognized that, they accepted it, they signed documents that said that this would always be secret, and that's the way they preferred it.
I would love to sit down with my dad and have a beer and, you know, shoot the bull with him, and because I know he was a really great Air Force guy, but he was also pretty cool dad.
The bar is high, the level of scrutiny intense. Recipients of the Medal of Honor must demonstrate extraordinary valor. But how can it be incontestably proven that a soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine performed his or her duties in such a way that deserves the nation's highest award for valor? It's 1968. A small unit of airmen comes under fire on top of a mountain while executing a secret mission. Who took direct fire? Did you see the explosion before you heard it? Was that man hit? The fog of war, and in the case of Chief Master Sergeant Richard Etchberger, faded memories, combined to make the investigation all that more complicated.
Has to be eyewitness to speak to the valorous nature, the valor, the honor that are displayed by the individual.
There were 4 survivors of the attack on Lima Site 85. The commander of the covert operation, Colonel Gerald Clayton, interviewed them all. Clayton recommended that Chief Etchberger receive the Medal of Honor. But then, Air Force Vice Chief of Staff John Ryan made it clear that a Medal of Honor would attract unwanted national attention. The U.S. was still denying any presence in Laos.
That it was politically unpalatable.
Still, they wanted to honor Etchberger's sacrifice.
His wife was told fairly quickly of his death. She was called to the Pentagon for an awards ceremony wherein she was sworn to secrecy and she was given the true circumstances of what had happened. She was then of course, awarded or presented his Air Force Cross.
I wanted to make sure that that yes or no, that this was going to be, it was going to be decided based on the merits of it, not based on any political pressure.
When the case was finally declassified in 1985, Etchberger's son, Corey, requested the award be upgraded. So the investigation began anew.
We're talking from 1968. Memories fade, stories are embellished, etc. One member who had given a statement said he was the only person that had a radio.
That was Tech Sergeant John Daniel. But Captain Stan Sliz indicated he also had a radio and was communicating with overhead aircraft. The staff at the Air Force Personnel Council determined each did have a radio, but because they were 100 to 200 meters apart, they weren't aware that they were communicating with the same pilots.
Even things as simple as who was the first person to be put on the helicopter, who was the second person, time of day, locations in the cave, everything to the smallest detail has to jibe, so to speak, for these to fly.
In the end, it all flew. The cross was rescinded in favor of the Air Force's Medal of Honor.
Recognizing that the decision makers are widely separated from the battlefield in terms of geography and time.
Closing that gap is the goal of the Military Awards Branch of the Army's Human Resource Center of Excellence at Fort Knox.
We gather witness statements, operational reports. In some cases, we've even had video feed from unmanned aerial vehicles.
These graphics were created to back up the case for Staff Sergeant Rob Miller. They show the unit position, positions of the enemy, and clearly describe Miller's forward engagement, drawing fire away from his team until he was mortally wounded. The Army even later created a battlescape, further detailing those events.
So he continued to charge forward through the open area, engaging multiple elevated insurgent positions, drawing their fire away from the trapped ODA and ANA members.
Still, despite the intricate detail provided at the unit level, there are often questions.
There's 5 people referenced in an action. We've got statements from 3. Where are the other 2? It's possible that those 2 people didn't agree. It's possible that those 2 people saw something different.
Once a packet is complete, it goes before an awards board.
They want to fly with you for some reason. I guess it's because they think you're the best.
In the case of Colonel Bruce Crandall, a Vietnam War helicopter pilot whose story is told in the movie We Were Soldiers,
We'll be landing under fire, gentlemen.
The board decided the recommendation for a Silver Star should be upgraded to the Medal of Honor. But in 1917, 864 recipients lost their medals after a congressional investigation revealed members of a Civil War volunteer regiment had received the prestigious award simply for re-enlisting.
We reward for true deeds and true action.
The standard is high, and it should be.
In those clouded eyes of folks who are honestly getting a little bit older, for them to know that there is justice and someone that saved their lives is finally got their reward, so to speak.
If you can do this job and go through a week and not read something or see something that just gives you kind of chokes you up a little bit, you're probably in the wrong business.
For the last 40 years, all Medals of Honor had been awarded posthumously. That is, the recipient died in the action for which the award was given. To be a living recipient is something else entirely. The Medal of Honor is a life-altering event in ways that only those who wear it can describe.
The day I received it completely changed my life. I was not the same person after that I was the day before, because I had an added responsibility that I'd never had before.
I think I was just kind of embarrassed because there were so many people who had done what I had done and got very little recognition for it.
I never felt that I deserved my medal, never will feel I deserve my medal.
It doesn't sink in. All of a sudden, here you are, you're surrounded by general officers, and here comes the President of the United States, and he's thanking you for your service.
Real honor of the Medal of Honor is that a handful of men, young men, thought I was worthy of it a long time ago.
I'm on a stage with these people and the family of Lance, and I'm wondering, you know, what am I doing here with these folks? You know, you just don't feel like you deserve to be there.
Well, it has always helped me stand a little straighter, maybe a little taller, to make a little better decisions, because I realize that although it's the person that may be making these mistakes, that it's the Medal of Honor. So I don't want to make mistakes.
Each of us were awarded our Medal of Honor. We took on a mantle of responsibility that said, you represent the service and the sacrifice of many, many men and women that have served, are serving, and lost their lives serving. And we take that very seriously. We're just the messenger that has been entrusted the Medal of Honor to carry that message.
I had a lot of help in getting the Medal of Honor because I was a company commander. I had 130 Marines and Navy corpsmen, and they're really the ones that have gotten the medal for me. So I kind of wear it for them.
I know when I received my medal, Jimmy Doolittle was the first gentleman I met, and he said, Mike, welcome to the greatest fraternity of men in the world.
I think we feel bound together because we all experienced, combat, which is a horrendous thing for anybody to have to be a part of.
It is a family bond because we have grown up together. All of the Vietnam Medal of Honor recipients, we've known each other as brothers for 40 years.
Band of brothers, yeah, you might say. We just all stick together, we all come to these, and then, you know, look out for each other and take care of each other and everything.
We only have 87 living recipients, and it's like a family. In over 40 years, I've lost. When I came in, we had over 380 Medal of Honor recipients, and now we're down to 87. So every time, and people like Admiral Stockdale, or the Father Image, or General Doolittle, or all these other great friends of yours, Nikki Bacon, which just passed away, and these other recipients, they're like your brothers.
It's a great feeling to get together with them because we can talk freely with each other and know what we're talking about. Whereas with the general population, and I don't say this in a derogatory remark, but a lot of them don't understand really what we went through. And we have to kind of play it a little cool, you know, I might say.
Now we get together, we don't tell war stories, we talk about our health.
You get very good training on how to do your job in the military. There's no training to tell you how to wear this.
It is much harder to wear that medal than it was to receive it.
At times it gets heavy because you're pushed and pulled. And you got to be able to bend with it, you know, and do what people expect you to do.
I guess it would be like any kind of celebrity. You're always on parade. People are looking at you, watching you a little bit, especially in the military, to see if you're out of line, because the medal represents so much of America, and you just don't want to do anything to disgrace it, to embarrass your fellow recipients or America.
I always felt I had to do more than my peers did, so that everybody would say, yeah, you earned that.
I don't look back at it very often. My philosophy is it happened. I was lucky to come through it. In my mind, I believe in miracles because it was a miracle that I made it that day. I think it's a distinct honor that people still remember us. We come from a long time ago. In my case, 60 years ago.
The day I got home, it was the best day of my life when I was released. If people ask questions, I'll answer it. But you know, then if they want to know if they want to go types of torture and so on, I just pretty much refuse that. But oftentimes after those conversations, I'll have some real bad dreams or nightmares. But
life has been good, and I've had opportunities that would have never come my way.
I think no one ever said in the morning, you know, I'm going to go out today and I'm going to get the Medal of Honor. You know, if they did, they're dead.
Our desire there'd never be another one, which means no more wars. But anytime you got war, you're going to have things that happen.
Salvatore Giunta grew up in Iowa and lived the life of a typical teenager. When his platoon was ambushed in the Korengal Valley in 2007, he didn't know that his life was about to change forever. All he knew was that his best friend needed his help.
Sal was definitely very outgoing.
From what I always knew of him, he was always really popular, always had a lot of friends.
I'd label him as a jock, a little bit of a wild child. You wanted him on your side because that was usually the winning side.
He was always really caring and really protective of me, definitely, because I was his youngest sister. He always wanted to make sure I was doing the right thing.
Whatever he was going to do, he was going to give it 100%. Whether that was something good and positive, like just excelling in sports, or maybe just hassling my parents.
It was work raising him. He wasn't an easy child to raise. I loved him to death, but teen years were really difficult back here at home.
There was one occasion we got a call. Are you missing a car? Yeah, we are. And is your son there? So we went to the bedroom and no, he wasn't. He says, well, we have your car and we don't know where your son is, but we do have his shoe. Even when he got to be about 20 years old, he was claiming, they never caught me. Well, they had your shoe, they had our car, they caught you. No, they never caught me at all. We even smiled about it a little bit then because we didn't know how this was all playing out. It was just all so unreal.
And Steve and I often would say, you know what, if he gets us steered in the right direction, it's going to be good. It will work out for him. But getting him to the right direction is really work.
He joined the Army, I think it was like a year, or maybe within a year after graduating from high school. It was a surprise. I didn't know he was even thinking about it.
Said that he was working at Subway at 10 p.m. and mopping, and the Army recruiter came on and said they were giving out free t-shirts, and his line was, I guess I'm a sucker for a free t-shirt. I was like, that doesn't surprise me one bit. That's the type of guy Sal was.
Him enlisting in the Army was totally his choice because he knew the direction he had been on and knew that that just wasn't going to work out.
Because he had such a zest for life and he found a place for it as a soldier. He went over to Italy and we saw some photos, but then all of a sudden a girl started showing up in a photo. We finally asked him the question, who is this girl that's always in the pictures? Well, that's Jen.
I met him because one of the other girls that was with me went to high school with him. We were walking to work, I think, that one day, and she saw him and, yelled his name from down the street, Sal, it's me, Tina. Then she introduced us all and, said where we're from, and me and him are from the same state, literally like an hour's drive.
She's from Dubuque, Iowa. It's like, wow. You go all the way to Italy to meet somebody from Iowa.
And me and him just kind of started talking from that point on.
So they dated before his first deployment.
I never got sick of him, which is a great thing. We could talk for hours and hours and hours and never run out of things to say.
Through that first deployment, she came back, continued her education at University of Iowa. Prior to his second deployment, I think they started to know it was very serious because he was talking about like, I don't understand this feeling I have. And Rose was quick to say, well, that feeling you have is love. Well, this is what it feels like, So I think they made quite a commitment during his second deployment that they were going to make a go of this the best they could.
The most exciting, craziest, scariest roller coaster ride that you can go on. You know that they're going to be deployed. You know that they're going to be fighting. You know that they're not going on vacation. If you have this constant thoughts running through your head about how are they doing, I hope that they're okay. I hope that I can help them. What can I do to help them?
I got the phone call. He had been, I don't know where he was, exactly what base, but they only went there for rest. And he had just been there like 3-4 days before that. And that's when we would get our phone call. And so when the phone call came in only a few days later, I knew something wasn't right. And he was crying, he was upset. And I said, can you tell me about it? And he said it very strong. He says, I will tell you once, and I won't tell you again, and don't ask any questions. So Steve grabbed the other phone, and we listened to what had happened that day.
We were on a large battalion operation where we were pretty much the main effort.
On one of those nights where it wasn't totally dark, but it was getting dark. The terrain was in such a case where we had to walk pretty much ducks in a row.
There was times we were on all fours crawling up, our hands and knees crawling up the terrain, trying to get into position. We knew they wanted to fight. We knew we were in uncharted territory, somewhere we hadn't been.
Sergeant Brennan, my team leader, he got probably about 10 to 15 meters into the clearing, and we heard what appeared to be a pop shot at the time. It was just a single shot. Probably about a half second later, it didn't even take long. The whole 12 opened up on us.
First platoon, being the lead platoon out, walked right into an L-shaped ambush. So close that the assets flying above couldn't distinguish between who was bad and who was good.
I remember our squad leader, he'd taken a bullet right through his helmet. It just barely grazed his skin.
I got shot in the stomach, and then I also heard my team leader, Sergeant Brennan, say that he'd been hit.
I mean, there were RPGs, PKMs.
Took a round in the helmet and got shot in the leg.
Everybody in that first squad was just shot. Sergeant Giunta sees these guys getting hit in front of him and immediately starts, bounding up to their positions after being shot twice in the chest.
He ran past us.
I didn't know where he went. I didn't know why he went.
He fought through the initial wall of lead.
They were dragging Sergeant Brennan away at that point.
Ran through the ambush, engaged 3 individuals that were running off with Sergeant Brennan's body.
I mean, they were taking on, they were trying to grab his friend, and he ran out there. He went after him, and it made perfect sense why he did that.
From what we know, he killed at least one of the enemy, grabbed Sergeant Brennan, makes sure that he's okay, and then drags him back over to the rest of the platoon that's still being engaged in combat with the enemy. When I talked to Sergeant Giunta, one-on-one later on, it was more or less like, hey man, I don't know how you did it, but why did you do it?
He was saying it through anger and through lots of sadness. You could tell at the moment that he was telling us he was actually reliving it.
I saw 2 people carrying one person, kind of by the hands and by the feet. But as I ran closer, I kind of realized more what was actually going on. And it was 2 ACM carrying Sergeant Brennan. So I just started shooting. I mean, that's what we do. And I grabbed Sergeant Brennan and dragged him back a little bit. But he was still alive and he was talking. He just was talking about how his face hurt, and he was shot in his legs and he was shot in his arms. Just tried to reassure him, everything's gonna be okay, everything's fine.
The foundation of this family, this tight-knit group that was forged together in the blast furnace of combat, he felt like any number of those guys would have done the same thing for him.
I didn't run on to do anything heroic. I ran on to go fight next to my brother, to go fight next to my friend who I already served 1 tour in Afghanistan with, who we live in the same barracks building for the last 4 years.
And he probably would have felt worse if he hadn't done it than he did, having to go through there and live through that painstaking event and see his friend basically die.
They took Josh up on the helicopter, and then they had a long walk back. And I don't know if it was when they got back or the following day they were told that they lost Josh. And what Sal had told us on that phone call, he says, he was alive, Mom. When they took him up, he was alive. I expected to find him alive when I got back. And that was hard for him. We've not talked to him again about that day. We vowed that we wouldn't ask him questions. So We have his version that he told us through the tears and the emotions, and then we hear the news through everybody else, what that looked like.
It started sounding like some story I had heard about or read about in World War I or World War II with Audie Murphy. You don't hear about single individuals taking on the responsibility to lead their squad when they're a specialist, treat their squad leader after they've been shot 3 times, and then third, go repatriate their best friend from behind enemy lines that's being dragged away by the enemy, and then to run back into the kill zone to start treating his men.
I've never heard anybody doing that on their own. I wouldn't say we were heroes. I would say definitely he was. I would definitely say he was a hero that night.
No matter what happens for the rest of my life, I'll always know that I was around the great ones, you know?
I remember the friends I lost every day, regardless of any medal. That medal puts me in a position where I'm able to tell the world about how great Sergeant Brennan, Specialist Mendoza are, and to tell the story of the men that are around me, not just on the night of the 25th. That was a 15-month deployment. We got shot at hundreds of times in 15 months, probably every day.
I'm going to go off script here for a second and just say, I really like this guy.
I honestly don't think it's hit me. This has been almost a 3-year process to the point we're at now, and it's always been, you know, I know what they said they put me in for, but it's not going to run my life. I'm not going to change what I'm doing. I'm not going to change what I'm doing tomorrow because this is happening. And now even that, with all this attention, it is kind of changing our lives a little bit more and pushing us in a different direction. But, I mean, I haven't changed, and it seems still surreal, I guess.
He is a low-key guy, a humble guy, and he doesn't seek the limelight. And he'll tell you that he didn't do anything special, that he was just doing his job, that any of his brothers in the unit would do the same thing.
These spotlights right now are on me, but I wasn't there. I wasn't the only one there that night. I've never gone to battle alone. I've never been in a gunfight alone.
That's why Salvatore Giunta risked his life for his fellow soldiers, because they would risk their lives for him. That's what fueled his bravery. Not just the urgent impulse to have their backs, but the absolute confidence that they had his.
I hope with all these years I can make that apparent to the world, that these people go out there and do this every single day, year after year, deployment after deployment, and it's taxing, but there's that great of people in our country willing to do this. And I hope that if I got the spotlights on me, that I can show the world that there's amazing people out there.
Yeah, the Medal of Honor reflects the gratitude of an entire nation. These are the soldiers of our armed forces. Highly trained, battle-hardened, each with specialized roles and responsibilities, but all with one thing in common. They volunteer. In an era when it's never been more tempting to chase personal ambition or narrow self-interest, they chose the opposite. They felt a tug. They answered a call. They said, I'll go. They are the very best part of us. They are why our banner still waves, our founding principles still shine, and our country, the United States of America, still stands as a force for good all over the world.